It's an honor to be here, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to have a conversation with one of my heroes, Tony Coelho. So, Tony, why don't we start? No doubt many people in the audience know about your background.
Started when I was about 15 years old. I had an automobile accident on our dairy farm in Central California. And as a result of that, I started having what we called in passing out spells. I'd gone to doctors, and the doctors told my family that I had epilepsy. But my family rejected that because they felt that if you had epilepsy, you were possessed by the devil. Now, my Republican friends know I'm possessed, but having your family feel that, it's totally different. I went to several doctors after that, and the doctors all said the same thing. And so I finally then, they took me to witch doctors, because that was the way to get rid of the evil spirits. And after going through 3 different witch doctors, I finally said I wouldn't do it anymore. Now, I continued with my passing out spells. That started in age 15, and I'm now 75, and I still have passing out spells. When I went to college here at Loyola University in Los Angeles, at the end of my time there, I decided that I wanted to become a Catholic priest. John F. Kennedy had just been shot the year before, and he devoted his life to helping out people, and I wanted to do the same thing. So I did my physical for getting into the seminary. And the doctor said to me after doing some tests, he said, "Have you ever had passing out spells or headaches or whatever?" And I said, "Yes, all the time." So he said, "Ever been told that you have epilepsy?" I said, "I never heard the word." And he said, "Well, you have it. And as a result, you're 4F and you can't serve in Vietnam." But the bad news is, that's the bad news. No, that's the good news, I'm sorry. The bad news is that you can't become a Catholic priest. And the reason you can't is because canon law established in 400 AD said if you have epilepsy or possessed by the devil, you can't be a priest. So I was rejected. I didn't feel bad because I'd gotten a lot of job offers. I was student body president, outstanding senior, and so forth. Every time I went to an interview, there was an application form, as all of you know. And on that form, the word, it was epilepsy. And as soon as I checked it, I never even got an interview, let alone a job. I started drinking, became drunk every day by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I then became suicidal because I knew that everything that I ever loved in my life had turned against me. And then one day I'm at a mountaintop at Griffith Park. All of you know Griffith Park. Actually, there's hills in Griffith Park, but if you're drinking, there are mountains. And as I was getting ready to do the dirty deed, and I heard some music, and there was a merry-go-round at the bottom of that hill. And for the first time, I saw these little kids getting off and on the merry-go-round. And a voice came over me and said, "You're going to be just like those little kids. You're never going to let anybody or anything ever stop you from doing what you want to do." I've not been depressed since. I don't get drunk. I drink, but I don't get drunk. And I've turned my life around as a result of that, and I've been able to do a lot of things. And the most important thing I just want you to know is that there is controversy at times is what is a disability. And when I got the ADA passed by the Congress, it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said that only physical disabilities were included in the ADA. Well, that meant I was kind of stupid, right? Because I helped write the darn thing. And the Supremes were saying, you're not included. So then we had to pass the ADA Amendments Act in order to cover mental health and all of the other issues that are not physical. So I just want you to know that I'm a strong believer in making sure that mental health, and epilepsy, and all our other conditions are covered by the ADA. That was the spirit of the ADA. It is the ADA. And I think that one of the things we don't appreciate at times is that we put up silos. If you're in this group of health condition, heart or cancer, epilepsy, mental health, whatever, that you deal in your own little silo. And the most important thing for us to do is to tear down those darn silos and work together. We are a strong voice if we work together. And so that instead of us just dealing with mental health, I want to tell you that for me and for a lot of others, we all want to help those of you who are involved with mental health and making sure that your rights are part of the disability rights and that we're all covered on those. That's my mission, that's my goal, that's what it should all be about.
So, Tony, let me ask you to talk a little bit more about that. When the Americans with Disabilities Act got enacted, it was very much a broad movement of people with disabilities. And as we think about the movement moving forward, can you talk about both that moment in time in terms of the disability movement coming together, but also coalitions and relationships that were built outside the disability rights movement with other civil rights movements?
I think people need to understand that the disability rights movement came together as a result of the civil rights movement. There was all kinds of efforts taking place in regards to people of color, women, gay rights, and so forth. The disability rights movement was part of that whole effort, and so it started actually based here in California, in Northern California. A group of people who were disabled felt that their rights were just as important as everybody else's rights. And they started a grassroots movement, went out throughout the country, and got the individuals involved, not groups, but individuals, aggressively involved, saying, we need our rights just like everybody else. And when I got into the Congress, I basically took advantage of those individuals, those groups that were all across the country, demanding that their rights be equal, got involved with them in writing the ADA. And we got all the other organizations agreeing with us, knocked down the barriers, and all worked together to get the ADA adopted. And that's made a difference in the lives of all kinds of people, not only here in the United States, but it's now the law of the land in 52 different countries. Not as enforced as much as it is here, but it's still basically there, and that work needs to be done to get it better in all the different countries that it's involved in.
What do you see as some of the big challenges facing the disability rights community right now, but also what excites you about the momentum and energy that you see within the movement?
On every civil rights law, and any law that's adopted, that the most important part is the enforcement of it. If you don't have the right people enforcing the laws, it doesn't do you any good to have the law in the book. And that is anything to do with mental health and epilepsy. It doesn't make any difference. The enforcement of it is critical. And right now I can say quite honestly that there's an effort to negate the impact of the ADA. There's an effort to do away with our basic enforcement rights. And the Justice Department is not doing anything to make sure that our rights are preserved. The law basically says that cities, counties, states, corporations, and so forth must comply with the ADA. But if there's nobody enforcing it, it doesn't do any good. So I am not going to speak here as a Democrat, but I'm going to speak here as an individual who's involved and say to you that each and every one of you, if you're not voting, if you're not involved, you're making a huge mistake, because the ADA is of no value unless the right people are in office to enforce it. Your mental health bills are not effective unless the right people are there to enforce it. So in going forward, I think the exciting thing that I see is that young people are now demanding that those of us old folks, get out there and do what needs to be done now. And they want to make a difference. And I happen to be a huge supporter of what the young people are doing all over this country in so many different issues. But we need desperately to all work together. And to me, that's what's exciting. I'm not one who stops and feels that the day has been done. I really feel strongly that tomorrow is going to be even better than today. I really believe that in all my heart. And the only way we can make it is all of us working together to make that happen. But it will happen because we have the desire, we have the ability to make it better.
So we can clap for that. Let's do it. Picking up on the theme of young people, and I know that after our panel, we have a couple panels of young people, and it'd be wonderful to engage them and hear what they have to say. I know that one of the things that energizes you, that you are passionate about, is this sense of idealism and hope and energy around disability and the disability rights movement that young people have. At Loyola Marymount University and Loyola Law School, we're privileged to work with smart, talented, idealistic young people that want to use the power of education and law to make their world a better place. Talk a little bit about what we're creating, the Coelho Center for Disability Law, Technology, and Innovation.
I've been very blessed. God has been very wonderful to me, and I feel I owe Loyola what they did for me, because when I was suicidal and I had no hope, Loyola guided me in the right place to in effect be successful in politics and business and so forth. And what I want to do is to set up this center at Loyola. We're setting it up. We'll announce it later this year. We're setting it up, and it's basically to give a voice to our movement, the disability movement, and to get the young people on that campus involved and engaged in trying to make a difference. One of the things that's happened, which I'm really excited about, is that the university has decided that there are no silos, that the education school and the engineering school, the communications school, and so forth, we're all going to work together, and we're not going to have just one department do this and another department do that and so forth. Everybody's going to work together. And the other thing that I really want to see happen is to have interns in each of these schools working together on a project. The engineering student with the communications student and the business student and so forth. That's the way we get there. That's the way we get success, is when we operate without the silos, when we operate together, because as was said here earlier in regards to teachers and doctors and so forth, should be working together and so forth, that is what we need. And so that's what we're going to try to do at Loyola, and I guarantee you we will do it in making a difference with young people leading the way.
I know that you've thought a lot and have a lot of thoughts about technology in the disability community. Can you say a few words about that?
Yeah, I believe very strongly that technology is the best friend for the disability community. If you think about it, all of you have phones. Some of you have iPhones, Apple, so forth. And a lot of that technology helps us in the disability movement. And the great thing about it is that it's part of the instrument instead of being an accommodation. It's built in. And with technology, and we're moving towards driverless cars, we're moving towards all kinds of different things that those of us with disabilities benefit more than anybody else. Just take, for example, on a minor thing, ADA requires that the corners on streets be accessible, right? Who uses those curb cuts? people with disabilities, mothers and fathers, babies in strollers, delivery men and women taking goods to the different stores on each of those blocks, young kids in roller skates and rollerboards and all the other stuff, unfortunately, but they use it too. But all the accommodations the accessibility that is provided for those of us in the disability community are used by everybody else. And technology is what gets us there. And artificial intelligence, those are the things that are really big today that people are working on. And I'm working with one of the major companies today to see the role that the disability community has and should have in artificial intelligence. So it, to me, is one of the big things that will make a huge difference for those of us in the disability community.
Two more questions. One, we at Loyola Law School believe...
By the way, we're determined to end on time.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We at Loyola Law School believe very deeply that law is a noble profession and that we're a service profession and that lawyers and the bar have an obligation to mirror the communities that they serve and to be a part of those communities and have a diverse profession that looks like those communities. There have been part of the challenges with the way that disability laws have been interpreted flow from the fact that too few lawyers and too few judges have life experience with disability. So I wonder if you could say something about the scope of our ambition with the center around that issue.
One of my major concerns is what the dean just talked about, and that is that we have all these different laws in regards to disabilities, but there is, to a great extent, either discrimination or people not willing to help in regards to the legal system. Law schools do not recruit people with disabilities because they don't get any credit for it. They get credit if it's a person of color, if it's a woman, if gay, and so forth, but not if you have a disability. Law firms don't recruit people with disabilities to be in their law firm because they don't get credit for it. And when President Obama was looking for judges to appoint, he came to me one day and said, give me somebody with a law degree that's an active person in the legal field that we can appoint as a judge. And so that we can actually get somebody out there that can feel and know what you go through with your disability. The bench isn't there. And so one of my main concerns in regards to the center is to work on this issue. We've already talked to the person at the American Bar Association who is involved in this, and she wants to work very aggressively with us to turn that around. I spoke to the diversity division of the American Bar Association, and for the first time they're including disability in the diversity division, and they're working with us. And they're working with us now to make sure that disabilities is part of diversity. We've struggled to make sure that when people talk about all the different things that are going on, they never mention disability. And so we're very aggressively in making sure that we are definitely part, when you talk about doing something on diversity, make sure that you include those of us with disabilities, because we're part of that. So that's our effort as well.
So last question, and I can't resist on this one. So we're in this beautiful cathedral, and you shared earlier your ambition to become a priest, which was cut short on account of your disability. Did that end the conversation in your own life?
No, it didn't. It's a great story. Hopefully all of you will appreciate it. So I'm now in Congress, and I'm the majority whip, so I get to take a delegation with me to 3 different countries to do whatever. And so they come to me and ask me where I want to go. And I said, well, I'm Portuguese, so I'd like to go to Portugal because that'll be a red carpet treatment and so forth, so why not? They say, well, if you're going to go to Portugal, we want you to go to Morocco because the King of Morocco and the President of Portugal are working on Middle East issues. Would you do that? I said, I would. And where would you like to go for your third city? Some of you may pick it up already. The Vatican. And I said, I want to go to the Vatican, but I only will go if I can meet with the Pope. And it was Pope John Paul. And so we get there, we get in the room in the Vatican, and the Pope walks in, we all stand up. He sits down, we sit down, and I go to the podium. And I take the view that when you have the podium, speak out. Say what you believe. And the podium doesn't have to be a piece of wood. It's when you have a microphone, you have the audience and so forth. Speak out. So I gave a pre-approved, very boring speech that had been approved by the State Department and the Vatican. When I got through with that pre-approved speech, I said, Your Holiness, I could not live with myself if I didn't say something personal. Now the minions around the room were going, choo, 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 choo. My delegation looked at me as if I was nuts, because I had not told anybody what I was going to do, including my wife who was traveling with us. And I said, as a young man, I decided I wanted to become a Catholic priest. I was denied entry because I have epilepsy, and canon law, established in 400 AD, said if you have epilepsy or possessed by the devil, you can't be a priest. I think that's very un-Christian of our church, and I wish you'd look into it. And I sat down, and he gave his very boring speech. And then afterwards, we took a bunch of pictures and so forth. And then my wife and I walked him to the door. He was holding her hand, got to the door, turned around and blessed her. He turned to me. He did not bless me. And if you're a Catholic and the Pope doesn't bless you, that's not a good sign. But he did not bless me. He said, young man, I heard your comments. He turned around and walked off. I didn't talk about that much because he didn't bless me. 2 years later, canon law was changed to permit individuals with epilepsy to become priests. I just want to make one thing very clear. I speak up, I speak out. I did that with the Pope, but I do not take credit for the change because nobody ever called me to tell me that they were doing it. It was done. And all I know is that when I had the opportunity, I spoke up. And that's what I would encourage all of you to do at all times in order to make a difference for those of us with disabilities. Thank you very much.
Well, Tony, on behalf of all of us, thank you for all that you have done with your microphone, your podium, and we look forward to engaging with all of you on the important work of our center. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. That was amazing.